When was the last time you walked down a street you know really well, or like through your favorite park, and you actually saw it? I mean, really noticed everything. Not just, hurried through, but picked up on all the little details, the sounds, the feelings, almost like it was the first time. It's funny how we get so efficient in our routines, isn't it? But, well, how much amazing stuff do we just filter out? How much detail do we miss? Today, we're going on this pretty remarkable journey. It's built from a series of really descriptive passages. And it's not just a story, it's more like an exercise,
Hmm.
in paying attention. We're going to explore how focusing on the small things can, well, turn something ordinary into something kind of magical. Basically, how simple moments build up into this rich, living experience. Our mission is to sort of unpack how these descriptions work on us and what that tells us about how we see the world.
Exactly. And that's what I find so fascinating about this deep dive. It's not just about what happens in the story, but it's about digging into the cognitive side of things, how we actually process information from those really basic sensory hits of color, a feeling, all the way up to, well, understanding a whole unfolding scene or narrative. It really mirrors our own ability to be truly present. So yeah, we're using this journey almost like a map to understand how our brains build reality, bit by bit.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that then. Starting small, like really small, at the most basic level of just sensing things. The descriptions start with these super fundamental inputs, almost like raw data, yeah. The sky is blue, there are no clouds, the sun is hot, the light touches my face. Just pure facts, no fluff, no interpretation needed. And it keeps going like that for a bit with more of these really short, clear examples, building this, well, it's a basic picture, but it feels solid somehow. Things like, my shoes are new, they shine in the sunlight, or that immediate hit of, I smell fresh bread. Ooh. When you hear those, you get an instant picture, don't you? It's so vivid. But why is that? Why is that immediate impact so strong? Is it just the simplicity, or is something else going on?
That's a really good question. It's not just that they're efficient. I think they tap into how our brains work with patterns and prediction. Our minds aren't just passively taking these in. They immediately start building a model, almost predicting what might come next based on blue sky and hot sun. These simple facts, they're like these basic features that our senses grab onto instantly.
Hmm.
We don't need a ton of context right away. They're almost universal experiences.
Interesting. And what's really amazing is how even using these super simple observations, the source creates a whole little emotional story, like a mini narrative. You get this bit. The child drops the ice cream, the child cries. Then the mother hugs the child smiles again. It's a complete little arc.
Ah,
Joy, loss, comfort, recovery, all in just a few short lines. How does it manage that? How does that brevity pack such an emotional punch?
yeah, it's a brilliant example of what you might call narrative minimalism because it's so unadorned, so direct. It acts like a prompt. It taps into our own memories and our ability to understand others' feelings, what psychologists call theory of mind. We instantly connect with that child's experience using these very condensed points. We sort of fill in the emotional blanks ourselves, making the story feel richer in our heads than the words alone might suggest. It's incredibly efficient empathy, really.
Okay, right. Narrative minimalism. I like that. But we don't stay there for long in that sort of simple fact zone. As the journey goes on, the sentences get a bit longer, the observations deepen, and suddenly it's not just listing things one by one. We start noticing more details, and this feels important, connections between the details. The
Yeah.
world starts to weave together. Yeah, like think about how different senses start to mix. There's that line, the smell of the flowers mixes with the smell of bread. It's not just flower smell here, bread smell there. It's a blend, a richer experience. Our minds just combine them, right? So what's happening, like cognitively, when these separate bits start merging?
Well, the key thing is that shift from just listing to showing relationships. When you talk about a mental map, that's actually pretty close to what's happening. Your hippocampus, other parts of your brain, they're constantly building this spatial and conceptual understanding. So when the flower smell mixes with the bread smell, the brain isn't just ticking two boxes. It's creating new connections, new associations. It's enriching the whole sort of semantic landscape of the scene. It's building a more complex idea or schema for that place, making it feel more real and memorable.
Okay, so the map gets more detailed. And as these details link up, the scene itself comes alive. It gets dynamic. We hear about people waiting at the bakery, kids looking in the toy shop window, pointing at things, the general buzz of a crowd on the street. So we're not just seeing static objects anymore. We start to feel the pulse of the city, right?
Yeah.
That human energy. What's the technique there? How does that draw us in?
Well, it shifts from just describing things to showing actions, which employs narrative. By detailing actions waiting, pointing the source invites us to engage uh, our mirror neuron system. So you're not just observing, you're subtly simulating those actions, maybe even the feelings associated with them in your own mind. It makes the whole environment feel lived in, dynamic. It stops being just a backdrop and becomes, well, a stage. The crowd, the waiting, the pointing, these are cues that trigger our social awareness, our empathy, and pull us deeper in.
Right, right. We start to populate the scene in our minds. And then right in the middle of all that city energy, there's this interesting little pause. The narrator finds a small bookstore, buys a book about travel and adventure. It feels like more than just, picking up something to read. It feels kind of symbolic, maybe, reflecting this deeper curiosity, maybe. How does that little moment fit into the bigger picture of observing the environment?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just a random detail. It amplifies the whole theme of this deep dive, doesn't it? That book, Travel and Adventure, it becomes a kind of metaphor for the journey of observation we're already on. It signals a move from just passively receiving information to actively seeking out meaning, seeking broader experiences. It's a moment of um, cognitive self-referencing, maybe, where the idea of adventure in the book connects to our own, inner desire to explore both the world outside and our own perception. It's a reminder that every place holds stories.
I like that. A metaphor for the journey itself. And right after that moment, that connection, the whole scene shifts again. Big change. We move into a park. And the description instantly changes tone. It's calm, things slow down, the park is full of life, but also the sound of the falling water is soft and calming. And this line, for a moment, the busy city outside disappears and there is only peace in the park. It's like taking a deep breath. What's the psychological effect of that sudden shift?
It's a fantastic way to manage the sensory load and our emotion response. Our brains are always sort of assessing our environment. The city, with all its noise, crowds, strong smells, that demands a lot of cognitive energy, right? High stimulation. Stepping into the park with the softer sounds, the natural elements, that signals a drop in that cognitive demand. This allows our parasympathetic nervous system to kick in, which promotes relaxation, calm. The description cleverly guides us through that physical and mental shift, highlighting how restorative nature can be.
Okay, so the park offers this kind of mental reset. And now, as the day goes on in the park, the observations get even more layered, more nuanced. It's painting this really rich picture, not just of the place, but of people connecting, sharing an experience. The details start building atmosphere, emotion. Yeah, like look at how the light changes the mood. Clouds move slowly across the horizon. The tall trees look darker now and their shadows stretch across the grass. It's not just telling us the time of day. Those aren't just facts about trees and clouds. They're details chosen to build a specific feeling, aren't they? A sense of the day winding down. Maybe something's about to happen.
Exactly. That's moving into what you could call environmental storytelling, using these atmospheric cues. The darker trees, the stretching shadows, they're not just visual data. They evoke that specific quality of light you get late in the day, which we often associate with things winding down or maybe becoming more introspective. These details, they're subtle, but they're really effective at sort of priming our emotional state for what comes next. Building anticipation is a very elegant use of visual metaphor to show time passing and set a mood.
And right into that mood, that atmosphere, comes the bit with musicians by the fountain. Such a simple thing, three young people getting ready to play music, but it completely transforms the space. All these separate individuals in the park suddenly become this temporary little community. You feel the anticipation, maybe their nervousness, then those first notes. It's a lovely moment of people coming together. And the effect of the music itself is just, wow. The description says the whole park feels different, calmer, warmer, and more alive. People stop walking. Kids who are running around suddenly stop and watch, wide-eyed. Strangers are standing near each other, smiling, tapping their feet. It says the music connects everyone. A shared moment, totally unexpected. And then that little boy with the red balloon looking right at us, asking, "Do you like music?" It's so direct, so innocent, just looking for that connection. What is it about sharing something like music that creates such strong bonds, even between strangers?
Well, that's a fantastic illustration of collective effervescence. It's a term from sociology, actually. It describes that heightened emotional state and sense of unity people get from shared experiences, especially rituals or performances like listening to music together. Cognitively speaking, the shared rhythm and melody of music can actually help synchronize brain activity among the listeners. And again, those mirror neurons are likely involved. We unconsciously pick up on and sort of mirror the emotions of people around us, leading to this shared feeling. The music bypasses our individual thoughts and creates this kind of universal language. It fosters belonging. It's powerful stuff. And the child's question, it just perfectly captures that basic human need to share appreciation, to connect over something beautiful.
Collective effervescence.
Right.
And then the journey sort of gently comes full circle. There's a touch of sweetness, maybe a little sadness. The music stops, people clap, they cheer, but then they start to drift away. That shared moment dissolves, the park gets quieter again, the city sounds creep back in, and the narrative ends as evening arrives. Shops are closing, but restaurants are opening. Get those vibrant smells of food bread again, fried rice, grilled meat, and sounds of laughter from a cafe nearby, their voices described as music of another kind. It's a really beautiful, gentle way to close the day, wrapping up all that observation.
Wow. Okay. What an incredibly immersive trip that was, from just a simple blue sky and feeling the sun
Wow.
all the way to that shared joy of music in the park, connecting strangers. We've really seen how just paying attention, connecting simple observations can build this extraordinary, rich story of a single day. It really shows how much more is there when we, consciously tune in.
Absolutely. And this deep dive, it isn't just about analyzing someone else's experience. It really is a kind of blueprint, isn't it, for how we can transform our own daily lives by consciously using our senses, by actively looking for the connections between things. We stop being just passive observers. We start actively building a richer, more vibrant personal story of our own experiences. It shows that true presence, that deep engagement. It's not always about big dramatic events. It's about the incredible depth we can find in the ordinary just by, well, paying attention.
So maybe the question to leave you with is this. As you step out tomorrow, maybe on that same familiar street or into the park or even just moving around your own home, what will you really see? What tiny detail might you notice for the first time? What connection between a sight and a sound or a smell and a feeling will you make? What could transform your ordinary surroundings into an extraordinary, rich story that's just for you? Yeah, maybe try and discover those hidden symphonies playing out in your own day-to-day life.